Introduction. The 20th century has witnessed rapid development of new technologies. It stands to reason that their impact on the environment cannot be underestimated. At the present moment, humankind has to resolve one of the most complicated dilemmas in its history, in particular how to achieve equilibrium between the needs of people, or, probably it would be better to say public good, and the risks to the earth. One has to admit that in the vast majority of cases, human activities have only detrimental effects on nature, and under some circumstances, scientific achievements may easily aggravate these effects. In this essay, I would like to focus on energy technologies, because they often pose the major threat to the environment. Overall, there are many means of generating and harnessing energy, but none of them can be regarded as safe. At this point, it is hardly possible to imagine our life without power stations, electricity, and so forth. One can hardly deny that these are constituent and almost inseparable parts of our life. Yet, the risks they present to people and nature are almost unpredictable. In order to substantiate this statement, we may refer to specific examples, such as nuclear power plants. Its explosion can leave a great number of people dead, as it actually happened in the USSR in 1986. The so-called Chernobyl catastrophe has always been a warning to us. Even now, there are many victims to this disaster, and it is impossible to predict when the consequences will be alleviated. Discussion. At first glance, it may seem that the only possible solution to problem is to substitute these technologies by safer ones. In fact, many countries prefer not to have nuclear power stations. Certainly, such policy is rather prudent, because it ensures that the environment is not imperiled. Nonetheless, we should say that such approach is not always applicable, because there are some states which simply cannot afford such transition. The thing is that nuclear power is by far the cheapest way of generating energy, and occasionally it is the most optimal solution, especially if we are speaking about the developing world. Thus, it is necessary to take into consideration socio-economic factors. Another issue, which should not be overlooked, is the availability of natural resources. In some regions, nuclear power is the only way of solving energy problem. It goes without saying that we must attach primary importance to long-term policies, but the transition to ecologically safe technologies may sometimes lead to severe recession and economic crisis, especially in third world countries. Perhaps it is of crucial importance to exercise constant supervision over power plants and bring at least gradual improvements, which may eventually make this technology more reliable. Apart from that, there are many cases which also illustrate this dilemma, for instance, the extraction of oil in the Pacific Ocean. A great number of people protest against such practice. Nevertheless, even they have to admit that in the near future, it will be the only alternative. It is possible to come up with several suggestions regarding this issue. First and foremost, we need to emphasize the fact that people will exploit the resources of the nature for a certain period of time, after that they will become entirely depleted. Therefore, it is necessary to devise less expensive and safe means of generating energy. In the meantime, we need to consider socio-economic situation in a particular region. In some cases, financial assistance should render to those countries who cannot, independently, cope with this problem. The impact of new technologies on the development of the society. There is a widely held opinion among many philosophers and scholars that new technologies affect the development of human society. Overall, it seems that these are two variables that are so closely interwoven, and it is hardly permissible to separate them from one another. Occasionally, it is the society which gives rise to new technologies, because there is popular demand for them. Sometimes, this process may be reversed. There are several cases which can illustrate this process. For example, the supporters of the Marxist society may argue that scientific discoveries or inventions may contribute to further stratification of the community. The thesis comes down to the following: a person who is able to purchase and utilize the achievements of engineers or constructors will be able to dictate terms to other people. In order to support their argument, they refer to the so-called Industrial Revolution, which began in the United Kingdom in the 18th century. The invention of steam engine or spinning machine resulted in the stratification of the then society, because only very few could buy these devices, and subsequently use them for their purposes. It is extremely difficult to predict how these relations between the society and technology will develop in the near future. In this respect, we need to discuss the concept of technocracy. Traditionally, it is defined as a political system according to which engineers or scientists take control of the state. It seems that there is a slightly different scenario. Perhaps, the helm will be taken not by scientists, engineers, or the inventors of new technologies, but by those ones who hire them. There is sufficient evidence indicating that this prognosis is not something unrealistic. Big corporations have always attracted the attention of the public, but this issue still requires thorough examination, because for a considerable amount of time the government took somewhat laissez-faire approach to new technologies and economy. Consequently, leading companies, there is no need to name them in this essay, have transformed into de facto or real rulers of many countries. It may seem that new technologies only aggravate the situation, but one should take into consideration that science, itself, is always impartial. It is supposed to work for the sake of all members of the community. Thus, the government must ensure that new technology does not turn into a means of control. Perhaps, some changes in the legislation are needed, especially concerning the anti-monopolistic laws, which still allow corporations to control the market and subsequently the world. Conclusion. Therefore, it is quite possible for us to arrive at the conclusion that new technologies and society can be considered as two interdependent variables. Their development is a two-sided process. It is not quite appropriate to presume that only new scientific achievements influence the community. Yet, it has to be admitted that the situation, which has recently emerged, suggests that very soon people possessing new technologies will come to power, which means that the rest of the world will become completely dependent on them. In order to avoid this disaster, it is necessary to review already existing legislation, which enables this organization to achieve dominant positions.